Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 on 4 on Switch is messy. So here's the breakdown. The Switch 2 physical release, well, it's not physical. It's a code in a box, no cartridge. The Switch 1 version does have a cartridge, but the box says download required. I actually question how much is going to be on that cartridge. But also, most importantly, for physical, there's no upgrade path between the two. So today, I'm testing 3 options. The Switch 1 version, the Switch 2 version, and Switch 1 version running on Switch 2 hardware. We'll be looking at visuals, frame rate, resolution, and load times. Basically, what's different, what's not. And if you are new here, I cover all things Nintendo Switch, performance, comparisons, deals, reviews. So hit subscribe if that is your thing, support a smaller channel. Alright, so visuals, and same game, same content, but visually not even close. The way it looks on Switch 2 shows just how much more headroom the new hardware brings. It's still the same design, just far less compromised. Now, clarity is the first thing you'll notice. Character models actually hold their shape. You can see the folds in clothing, sharper silhouettes around arms and hands, even proper texture in hair instead of that soft plastic blur. Ground detail gets a boost too, so in places like suburbia or the college level, Switch 1 turns pavement into a flat smear. On Switch 2, you get cracks, seams, and scuff marks. But more than that, the world just feels fuller. Environmental props, signage, decals, all missing from the Switch 1 version, they are intact on Switch 2. The archway, for example, at the college has its name, and distant scenery stays in view. Trees cast shadows. In London, puddles break up the plaza, fountains reflect their surroundings, and those giant digital ad boards actually pulse above the skyline. All of that is static or missing on Switch 1. Now, lighting and shadows follow suit. Dynamic shadows return in levels like Foundry and School, and while the reflections aren't doing anything wild, they shimmer and respond in ways Switch 1 just can't handle. The draw distance also holds up better, less popping, more stable background detail, and yeah, this is all during fast movements. Now, to be clear, geometry and layout are identical, but Switch 1 trims aggressively, flattening lighting, dropping effects, leaning on blur to hide the loss. The Switch 2 version doesn't need to. It's the same game, presented with the visual density it was built for. This all said though, it's still not perfect on Switch 2. Image quality is softer than what you'll see on Series X or PS5. I think it works. To me, this almost looks like 1440p upscaled to 4K. Regarding handheld mode then for both systems as well, both versions hold up incredibly well. As for the Switch 1 version then running on Switch 2 hardware, it won't restore missing assets, but you do get a bump in clarity just from the hardware alone, and you're seeing that on screen right now. Okay, so let's talk performance, and first up, credit where it's due, the Switch 1 build targets 30 FPS, and for the most part, it holds. Running it through analysis, it stays steady the majority of the time, though I did catch occasional, and I'm talking very rare, dips to 27 or 28. So yeah, nothing major, but enough to notice if you're watching closely. Now that said, something still feels off, not in a dramatic way, but there are moments where the pacing feels uneven, like the game is subtly speeding up or slowing down, even when it's technically hitting 30. My guess, frame pacing inconsistencies. It's not game breaking or anything, far from it in fact, but it does affect how smooth things feel in motion. Now running that same Switch 1 build on Switch 2, it tightens things up. It locks to 30, I didn't notice any drops, and the pacing actually feels smoother. The extra horsepower seems to iron out some of those inconsistencies. Now though, the native Switch 2 version, that is a different story. This one targets 60 FPS, and honestly, it feels like night and day. Animations are more fluid, controls are tighter, and the whole experience has a snap the 30 FPS version simply can't match. But it's not flawless. You'll see drops, sometimes into the low 50s, occasionally mid-40s. Now these are not frequent, but I want to say here they're also incredibly inconsistent. You can repeat the same line in the same map and get completely different results. Smooth one run, jittery the next. And this leads me to my theory after spending more time with this game. I actually think there's a memory leak on Switch 2. These dips, they tend to show up during longer sessions, and when I quit and reload, performance snaps right back to normal. So for example, on screen right now, you are seeing after a few hours of gameplay, as you can see with that 50-40 mark, it's definitely taking a hit. However, reloading, and now we're pretty much back to 60. Yes, it's still fluctuating very slightly, like 59, 58, but as you can see, a dramatic improvement. Now this would also explain the other major issue on Switch 2 that I hit during testing. That is crashes. The Switch 2 build hard crashed on me around 7 times across roughly 6 hours of play. Switch 1, by comparison, didn't crash once, though to be fair, Switch 1 sessions are definitely shorter. See, I don't think this is a deal breaker or anything, and I suspect the patch will clean it up pretty quickly, but it's worth knowing going in if you're a day one buyer. You know, overall, the extra power is definitely being used, and when it's running well, the 60 FPS version absolutely elevates the experience. But right now, as it stands, it needs just a bit of a cleanup, basically. All right, now let's quickly just touch on load times, because there's actually a decent difference here. It obviously varies a bit by level, but just as an example, loading into the first location on Switch 1 takes about 20 seconds. On Switch 2, it's cut in half, just 10 seconds. Running the Switch 1 build on Switch 2 lands somewhere in the middle-ish, around 14 seconds. Now, some of the levels on Switch 1 can take up to a minute to load, I did find. On the Switch 2, dramatically reduced, more in the range of 15 to 20 seconds. That was in particular for me, London. Now, funnily enough, across the board, honestly, with load times, they felt a little long to me. Maybe I'm just getting impatient in my old age. But look, on Switch 2, it's still a very clear improvement. And once you are in, restarts are going to be instant across all 3 ways of playing. So overall, while both versions are respectable in their own right, the clear winner for me is the native Switch 2 build. The improved clarity, the added environmental detail, the smoother 60 FPS target when it's, doing what it should. It all adds up to a version that just feels better the moment you pick up the controller. It plays tighter, looks more complete, and delivers what this game was always aiming for without the heavy compromises. That said, though, it's not flawless. This memory leak issue it appears to have, it's causing those dips into the 40s, high 40s, inconsistent pacing in longer sessions because of this, and occasional hard crashes. They're not deal breakers, but would love to see a patch ASAP, and hopefully this is something a quick update can fix. But even with that in mind, if I had to pick just one version to play, no question, it's the Switch 2 build. Even with its current issues, it's the one that gets closest to what this game should feel like. Now, as for the Switch 1 version, I think it holds up well on original hardware. You'll still have fun with it, and yeah, running it on the Switch 2, that's a different story. Unlike Raido, which we did before, I tested it in the same format, I wouldn't expect any meaningful boosts really beyond a minor clarity bump. Additionally, as well in handheld, you are going to notice quite a bit more blur. It's also still capped at 30 FPS, even on Switch 2 hardware, because that is obviously a hard cap they've put in place. See, I think if anything, it holds a bit steadier, but it was solid to begin with, and still, visually, it is now stripped back. So all of this video is basically to say this is a tricky one for physical collectors, or even anyone hoping to grab a boxed version, because you can at least trade that in later. The compromises you are making, though, are what I would consider sizable. You're sacrificing quite a bit just to own the cart there, visuals, performance. Across the board, it's seeing bumps up, and again, Switch 2 has problems, yes, but still, big cuts. See, I think my final note here would basically be, again, it's not an easy choice, but if experience comes first for you, I would say, in this case, Switch 2. All right, hopefully this video helped you out. If you do have any more questions, do let me know in the comments below. I've done like 3 videos on Tony Hawk at this point. Promise you, this is my last one, until we at least see that patch, which hopefully fixes things up. But yeah, if you enjoyed it, do me a favor and subscribe. It helps out a channel like mine a huge amount. And I'll see you on the next one. Cheers all.